Welcome back to the final leg of Weekend Express. I'm Ashley Mazuri. Now, we're going to be having a conversation on maternity and paternity leave. And last week, Microsoft East Africa announced the increment of its paid maternity leave to 5 months from 3 months, while paternity will be 6 weeks from now on. The new arrangement almost doubles what many local companies offer. According to Microsoft, the package is hoped to ensure all parents get adequate time to bond with new additions to their family, regardless of whether the baby arrives through birth or adoption. And now the people who are going to be joining me in studio to have this discussion is, to my immediate left, Dorcas Wainaina, who is the Executive Director of the Institute of Human Resource Management. After her is Carol Gatura, who is into communications and is also a blogger about motherhood. And last but not least, to the far end is Fred Oyola, who is one of the pastors of the Nairobi Chapel in South Sea. But before we get into that conversation, we're asking you, do you think Kenya should adopt 5 months maternity and 6 weeks paternity? We are asking you once again, do you think Kenya should adopt 5 months maternity and 6 weeks paternity? Let's get the conversation going on online. We will open calls later. The number is going to be below the screen. And you can tweet me directly at Ashley Mazuri or at my co-host Michelle Ngale. The hashtag to use is Weekend Express KTN. So I'll start with you, Carol. You're a mother of 2. What was your experience?
In terms of maternity leave?
Yes.
Yeah. It was, I would say it's short. Why I say that is because, especially for my first child, you're just trying to get into the hang of motherhood and parenting. I had a C-section, so you're healing as well and dealing with all these. They don't really teach you much. I think motherhood does not come with a manual. You roll with the times. So I took 1 month of my annual leave, some days that I had to add on to my maternity leave. But going back was what was tough. In terms of these, you know, the doctors will always tell you, and even beforehand, breastfeed your child until they're 6 months. But I already had started struggling with breastfeeding at the very early onset, and it took time before I got into the hang of it. And then I have to remember, I'm going back to work, so I have to start expressing. And I was those people who, my milk production was not at an all-time high. So when I got back to work, it started dwindling because of the pressures of work and trying to get into you're away from baby. And so I got into formula, and formula is not cheap. It's quite expensive. So the whole thing of trying to balance, your head is at work, but you're thinking of your child at home. I'm expressing, is the milk enough? I have this formula, it's too expensive, so you're trying to express to match your child's needs. Is my child safe at home? There's just a lot you're thinking about. So your head is not fully in that space, in that workspace. So personally, I think it was okay. I mean, eventually you adjust, but it takes a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just before we get into productivity, Fred, you only had 2 weeks to get used to the new normal. How was it for you?
It was a very... First of all, it was very short.
Okay.
And then by the time the 2 weeks is over, you feel as though you just almost saw a day or two of your child. And then all of a sudden you find yourself thinking so much of the child at work, how your wife is doing. And then on top of all of that, there is the issue of, especially the first child, there was a lot of thinking of, am I doing this right? There's not enough sleep. You're not really connecting with your wife. It's a new environment. And so it was quite a task. But to say that 2 weeks is enough would be a lie.
Okay.
That wasn't enough.
Dorcas, you deal with HR. You regulate all these rules that they have. You're also a mother. How was it for you?
Thank you, Carol. First of all, I think it's important for us to recognize that Kenya as a country has made a lot of progress. Before 2007, when we amended the new Act of Employment, mothers used to take 60 days, and they were never allowed to combine with annual leave. So you forfeit the other. and that was even more difficult. But then 2007, 10 years now, we got one with 90 days of maternity leave, and you can combine with your annual leave, and you can even add sick leave to that. So there was such an improvement, considering that there are other countries where they just take about 12 weeks. Tanzania is at 4 days. It was an improvement than before. Uganda is about 60 days, 12 weeks. They haven't changed much than Kenya. And so when you look at that as a country, I think we made a lot of changes, so to speak. How was it for me as a mother and a practitioner? I practiced HR myself over 15 years before I took over as a regulator of the profession. It was difficult, must tell you. Difficult in the sense that not the leave itself. I was in HR so fairly, I knew I need to go back to work. So I got back to work, but then you get back to work, you have milk all over you, and you do not have a place to express. I just found myself, I have to go to the bathroom and express this milk, otherwise I'm going to burst. And I had to pour all that milk. Then I got home, I have no milk for the baby. That hurt me to date, and I said I will never ever allow somebody to go through that. Now already that there was no environment that allowed me to do something else for the baby, even in the workplace, made it difficult, and I think that makes it difficult as well.
Now that you've seen this challenge, you've experienced them, is there any way that the regulator made sure that these challenges don't even get to other people? Because these are things that we experience every day.
Thank you so much. I think important to clarify. First of all, as a regulator, we regulate the profession.
Yes.
The professionals, how they behave in their workplaces, how they execute their responsibilities that they are licensed to practice, and then whatever they practice in the workplace is friendly and supportive of employees. That's what we regulate.
Yes.
But sometimes, you know, we may not really know what it is they're doing in the workplace. And given this platform, I would like to tell all of them in their workplaces, please make the workplace friendly for young mothers. Make sure they have a safe, private, secured room for them to express the milk. They should even ensure that there's a small fridge or implement where they can keep the milk and take it back home to the child. I do know mothers are told from time to time, you know, you can go to the bathroom, it's clean, and can you eat in a bathroom, however clean it can be? If you cannot, then the baby's food shouldn't be made there either. And so practitioners in HR should make the workplace friendly for the mother. In fact, there's a new movement in town. It is dubbed 100% human workplace. Now, making the workplace 100% human. It's 250 organizations in the country, in the globe, that have started this movement. And our own here is Safaricom and Isuzu East Africa. What is this about? Make a workplace friendly for everybody, human, from a mother to a gentleman who's going on paternity leave, to generally how we treat people. For example, why would a mother who has a 3-month-old come back to work? Maybe she gets in at about 9 because the baby didn't wake up early for her to breastfeed. Then she comes late, and then the first question you ask is, this the time you're coming in? Yes. Now, that's not making it human. There are these small things that we are not doing that are already making it difficult. And so if we think that extending the maternity leave would make it any better, the child will still not be even 1 year. So there is still need to make it even better. Yes. So this movement is one of those platforms I see that are going to help this country, and we are going to be part of those playing in that league as IHRM to say, let's make our workplaces 100% human.
Okay. Fred, let me come to you. You only had 2 weeks to get used to the new normal. And of course, you went back to work. How was it for you in terms of productivity?
Productivity obviously went down a little bit because being a first-time father and something that you had probably been praying for, hoping for, wishing for it to come, came with a lot of insecurities. Am I a good father? Is my baby okay right now? Is my wife breastfeeding? Remember, she said that the first few weeks she was struggling to breastfeed. So those are thoughts that are constantly in your head. And then, you know, the family, the friends are constantly asking, how is the baby? How is your wife? So coupling that with actual work in the office is not easy. So to say that the 2 weeks is short, I think, is very true. Yes. That's very true.
But will 6 weeks help? I mean, we...
I remember we used to say in the office that we needed at least a month or even 2. So I think 6 weeks is, it's not fully okay, but it's a step in the right direction.
Okay.
Yes.
Let me come back to you, Caro. Of course, being pregnant, the last few months are hectic. How was it for you at work? Even before, you know, you go to your maternity, before you give birth, how was it for you?
Of course, it's tough because you're heavy, you're tired constantly. You're also struggling to sleep because you're very uncomfortable. So sleeping is not interesting at that time. And also your head is just in that space of, I don't want a premature birth, or I hope my baby is still fine. You're thinking about your birth procedures. And also it depends, and I think that's where I agree with her in terms of making the workplace human. In terms of how are you as a supervisor or a boss dealing with the pregnant women in your workplace? Are you, and not necessarily saying that we needed to be treated any differently in terms of work, but for especially my second child, I had a very understanding supervisor who was able to tell me, okay, I understand. I think because she was also a mother as well. She understood that the last 3 months are crazy. So she said, take yourself easy, do not stress yourself. If you need help, please let your colleagues or me know. So she just made sure, because stress also builds up to having a premature birth or even a difficult birth. And so you want to ensure that the welfare of the child and the baby is fine. So I think it's just for the organizations and the companies to really take into, consideration, not just after maternity leave, but even for a pregnant lady. And especially there's some who go through difficult pregnancies. So they come and say, oh, I need to go to the hospital, or I just came from the clinic and I got this report. And if somebody has justified why they need perhaps rest days or for their workload to reduce, what is so hard in doing that? The person is still coming to work, they're still working, they're committed to it. But I think it's just those considerations for pregnant women to be able to help them also be effective in their work as much as they're carrying a life. And I know pregnant women don't like to be told they're sick. It's not a disease. Yeah. It's just that at some point, depending on somebody's levels, there are pregnant women who are active all the way to the end, and that's fine. But I think for those ones who have special needs in terms of different issues, and I think even for the women themselves, speak up. Don't say, oh, I'm being oppressed, or I'm being done this. If you don't speak up, nobody will know.
Yes. Yeah. So here is the issue of productivity levels going down. It's not only you, it's experienced worldwide, I guess. So the issue, Dorcas, of flexi time, what can be done to ensure that mothers or upcoming mothers, even fathers who have just, received a newborn, can have a conducive environment in terms of, can they leave work early, can they come in late?
In addition to that, thank you, Carol, it goes back to still making the workplace a human place to be. While a pregnancy is not a disease, it is not. It is still a condition that changes how we become. Our metabolism, the biology of it, I'm carrying a burden already, even our walking changes. One time, I had this young lady, I think it's about 2 years ago, and in the workplace, she was expectant, and I looked at her, I said, you are not okay. You need to go home right now or go to hospital. She said, no, but what about my boss? I said, I have just said that. I'm the head of HR here, and I've decided you must go home, forget about the boss, because she really did not look okay. But I could tell she's scared. If I go, how will it be seen about my work? Indeed, I pushed her out. I said, give your work to somebody, and then she left. Let me tell you, she actually gave birth prematurely, and the baby had a problem that was linked to stress. And the stress was back to work. And again, about speaking up. Sometimes women may not speak up because, again, we are faced with an environment, and I'm not saying just men, but we're in an environment that is looking at us as if we are a bother, as if we should not be pregnant. And I ask, where will be the next president coming from if we are not pregnant? If you were somebody who was not pregnant, then you all couldn't be here watching us. So then women are like, if I speak up, I would look like a bother, so let me not be a bother, and I still need the job. So sometimes women, we don't speak up just in case something goes wrong. For somebody to speak up, the environment should allow for that. You know, there's an environment you go in and the way it is, you're like, please, sir, today I'm not feeling too well. Then they tell you, just go home. I think you actually need to rest a little bit. But how can you go to an environment where when you come in, somebody does not even say hi, they just pass you, like they did not notice it was a pregnant woman. Or they get into the lift and they shove you in, and they didn't notice this was a pregnant woman. Already, that scenario does not make it easy for a mother. Yes. And so, how does flexibility then come in? Flexibility should be a human thing for somebody to see and say, it's within reason that you need to go home. Also that when somebody is expectant and they're in the third trimester, or their wife is in the third trimester, somebody should understand, today, if pastor did not come in on time, it must be about the baby that's about to come. Let's not keep bothering him with the call, otherwise normally he would have come in. Yes. Or Carol may not be feeling too well today. I had one staff who has been expectant, and each time I look at her, one day I told her, today you don't look like a human being, because she looked so tired. I said, I think you need to go home. She said, if I go home, I don't know what I'll do with myself. But I assured her that she had the chance to be home as and when she felt like, because she was not in a situation to always be her usual self. So that flexibility then goes back to Carol is expectant. We all know, we see it. If she has not gotten in by 9, we should just, Carol, are you okay? I said, I'm okay, be done. Okay, fine. If she
doesn't happen
we are
always.
Happy. But that's why we are saying it's the work environment, it's the managers in the workplace, it's those HR professionals of ours in the workplace that should be on the lookout to educate, to sensitize, to advocate for a human workplace and make it easier, not only for the women, but for the men as well. Let me tell you something about men. A young man I worked with was bubbly and loud and, you know, the voice of the party. All of a sudden was quiet. I said, something is not right with Moses. I said, I need to check with him. So we had a common point that made me get through to him to speak. I got to learn this. He had a girlfriend who had just miscarried. His mother passed on years back, so he didn't have anybody to go back to or a sister to ask what to do. So I realized, oh my goodness, I was going through a very difficult time. He needed money to get her out of hospital. Remember, this is a girlfriend. And I said, okay, we don't have a policy on advance, but I need to help this guy. And I said, give this guy money to get the girl out of hospital so he can be fine. And we had to do that. So sometimes it's not about the women, because that we see. Yes. The men are going through a lot. Yes. We don't see, but we don't know. Remember, we are also now in a setup. Pastor Carol are not living with their parents around here. There are few who are lucky their parents are also within Nairobi, but you're still not in the same compound. Yes. And so you don't have a family support right next to you, your mother who tells you, latch the baby like this. Because our problem, I didn't even know how to latch, so the nipples were torn. I must tell you, actually at some point my blouse was always up because I needed wind to cool them down. And I didn't have somebody to keep up. My mother can't live with me all the time. Pastor is laughing. That alone is a problem. Yes. That alone is a problem. And I didn't even know that there are things I can buy and stuff in so the milk doesn't burst and come through my clothes and I'm in the office and people are looking at me. And I'm thinking, what was that? I'm like, oh, milk. But I'm like, you know, it is food for the baby. So it is the environment to be made sensitive, caring, 100% human. The people to drive this is the leadership of those organizations, is our HR professionals in those organizations who must be aware and proactively do that. It is the mothers to also, in their own way, speak up. But I must emphasize, if the environment is not friendly enough for them to speak, what happens in our head is that I'm going to lose my job and business needs to run. So I don't want to lose my job. After all, this organization retrenched, this one is about to retrench, that one automated and retrenched. I don't want to lose my job, so I will not speak up.
You raised an issue that is very important. You said some women go through miscarriages because of stress that they face at work. In such a case, is one allowed to sue the company?
Well, Carol, you know, one can actually sue, but it is the burden of proving that that miscarriage was due to stress from the workplace. Yes. Is this country in a place where you can even prove that? There are deaths that we have not proven that are actually explicit. So again, the charges to file a case in court, legal fees and all of that, so people just move on. If somebody wanted to sue, they can, but they also need to realize once you sue, then you're not an employee in that place. So again, they're all odds stacked against somebody. So that's why most mothers or to-be mothers drop out of employment because that's the best thing to do.
Yes.
Where I worked myself one time, I was expectant when I was working and living in Khartoum in Sudan, and it was extremely stressful. There were no green vegetables for me to eat, and so my hemoglobin was always dropping. And so I was so stressed. I called my husband, I said, you know, I'm really stressed. He said, you know, the baby is more important. Is there a way you can try? I said, I think the only way is to just come back home. And that's what I did. I just came back home. I gave birth to that child, and I said, life must go on. So that is why we drop out of employment, because we don't get the support we need. And my option, I can't fight this, and let me just go home. That's how we do it.
Let's talk about the issue of after giving birth, after the 3 months, you come back to work. Nowadays, finding good help in Kenya is a problem. How is it for you, Carol? I'll start with you.
Okay. Yeah, nannies, house helps. I always tell my husband that the day my children will be independent to a point they can dress themselves, even if it's like 7 years,
Yes.
I'm done with house helps. But yeah, it's stress, and that's why I say that's something else that adds to that.
Yeah.
There are some mothers dependent. Okay, so I decided to get help for my first child because we're just the two of us. We got a help before, just a few months before I gave birth, just to at least see the person, gauge the person, so that even throughout my maternity leave, I would like maybe sometimes give her the baby and see how she handles the baby. So it's still not like because you trust this person throughout your maternity leave, when you've seen they've really sort of proven themselves, that you're like, okay, I can go back to work and I'm fine. Trust me, you're back at work first day, you're constantly calling like after every hour. Has the baby drank milk? Why is the baby crying? Like if you call and the baby is crying, you're thinking, oh God, what has she done? Has she left the baby? So yes, the issue of nannies or house helps is a big deal, especially for mothers. And that's why she said some even opt not necessarily to drop out of work because of the stress, but you have a house help who's not taking care of your baby well. I'm lucky enough, or I can say, I can clearly say I'm lucky. I've not had serious cases of negligence with my children. Most of them have been, she calls and says she wants to just go to the countryside, up and leave that day. And I'm like, so what am I supposed to do tomorrow? I just came back from maternity leave. So you have those challenges where you're thinking, you've just come back. How do you tell your boss, I need to take another week off because I have to look for a nanny, and they're like, "Ay, ujajipang," you know. So it's stressful, but that's another thing that you find. I have some friends who've actually left work and said, "I cannot leave my child with anyone else. Let me stay at home and take care of this child," because they've dealt with issues of negligence. You've found children being abused, because to be honest, this is somebody who, unless you have somebody who has the heart to take care of your child and has the heart to do that, there are others who are like, this is not my child, it's not my baby, I can do whatever. So you're battling so many things. Milk production, the house help you've left at home, you've not slept well the whole night, and then you and your husband also having clashes because you're thinking, you're sleeping, I'm not. What is, you know, so it's quite tasking the first.
Okay, we need to take a short break right now, but when we come back, Freddie is also going to be telling us about his experience after paternity. A few tweets already coming in. Mark Ko Onyango is saying, employer watch. MK Pekngeno is saying paternity leave for what genuine reason. Vincent Obiri is also saying yes, but wanaume wanaongezewa ikue 3 months. These are just some of the conversations and the responses that we're having online. Let's take a short break now. When we come back, more.